You never expect anything strange from the apartment next to yours, until it starts keeping you up at night. I never really noticed the apartment next to mine until late autumn, when the nights got colder and the silence became heavier. I live on the third floor of a 5-story building, one of those concrete rectangles built in the 80s that echo every footstep in the hallway. For the first 2 years, I assumed the unit next to mine was empty. I never saw anyone go in or out, and I never heard anything through the shared wall. No music, no voices, no movement, just stillness. Then, sometime in November, I started hearing a humming. At first, I thought it was my refrigerator, or the old pipes groaning again. But it wasn't coming from inside my apartment, it was coming from the vents. It was low and steady, like someone humming a single note without ever stopping for breath. I stood on a chair to get closer, placing my ear to the metal grate. And there it was again, a human hum, flat and emotionless. It didn't even wobble or break. Just one note over and over again. I told myself it could be a sound system. Maybe the neighbor finally moved in and had weird taste in ambient music. But the humming never changed pitch, never got louder or softer. It was always there when I got home from work, no matter the hour, and continued into the night. One evening around midnight, I turned off all the power in my place just to make sure it wasn't something electrical. My rooms went black, but through the vent, the humming was still there, clearer than ever. I knocked on the neighbor's door the next day. I felt silly doing it. I didn't even have a complaint, really. I just wanted to put a face to the sound. No one answered. I waited, then knocked again, louder. I could hear my own heartbeat. Still nothing. I leaned in, tried to hear movement inside, but there was nothing but the faint buzz of hallway lighting. I gave up and went back to my apartment, the door across the hall still blank and mute. After that, I became obsessed. I'd stand near the vent and try to figure out if the humming ever paused. Didn't. I began recording it on my phone and playing it back at work, asking coworkers what they thought it was. Most shrugged. One guy said it sounded like an old person humming to themselves. That stuck with me. The idea of someone just sitting in the dark, humming for hours on end. For what? 3 days later, I came home and the humming had stopped. I noticed it the second I walked in. The quiet was jarring, like my ears had popped. I stood in the middle of my living room, waiting, but there was only the sound of my own breathing. I didn't realize how much the humming had gotten into my head until it was gone. That night, I barely slept. It was like the silence was louder than the sound had ever been. The next morning, I passed by the neighbor's door on my way out. There was a single, yellowed envelope taped to it. No name, no address. Just the number of the unit written in thick pen. The door looked different, too. Dustier. As if no one had touched it in weeks. The hallway light above it was flickering faintly, casting odd shadows against the frame. I reached out to knock, but pulled my hand back. I don't know why. Something about that door felt watched. I couldn't stop thinking about the envelope. That night, I tried to peek at it again, but it was gone. The door looked even worse in the dim lighting. Chipped paint, spiderwebs in the corners of the frame, as if it had been empty for years. But that made no sense. The humming, it had been constant, recent. I even still had the recordings. I stood by my vent and listened again, hoping it might come back. But all I heard was the faint creak of something shifting in the walls. The building manager came by later that week to inspect fire alarms. I cornered him in the hallway and asked about the neighbor. "No one lives there," he said without hesitation. "That unit's been vacant since I started here 3 years ago." I laughed, nervously, told him about the humming. He shrugged. "You probably heard something through the ducts. Sound travels weird in these old buildings." I wanted to argue, to show him the recording, but something stopped me. Maybe the way he didn't make eye contact. Maybe the way he said vacant, like he didn't quite believe it himself. That night, the humming returned. Started again around 11 p.m., low and familiar. I felt it before I heard it, like pressure in my skull. I sat up in bed, turned off everything in my apartment, and just listened. It was louder now, closer, I put my ear to the vent and almost recoiled. It wasn't just humming anymore. Sounded wet, like something thick moving behind the walls. I pressed my palm against the metal grate and felt a faint vibration. I barely slept. In the morning, I checked the hallway. The neighbor's door was closed, but there were dark marks near the bottom, like smudged fingerprints or soot. I knocked once, quick and sharp, and for a split second I thought I heard movement. A scrape. Something heavy shifting just behind the door. I stepped back. My heart was racing, but no one answered. I started having dreams about the wall, about hands pressing through it, slow and deliberate, stretching the paint like skin. I'd wake up sweating, the hum still echoing in my ears. Once, I woke to find my bathroom mirror fogged, though I hadn't used hot water. On it, someone or something had drawn a spiral with a finger. It wiped away too easily, like condensation, like breath. I stopped inviting people over. I couldn't explain it, and I didn't want to. Every time someone asked about my neighbor, I'd just shrug. But I knew there was something in that unit. Something that wanted to be heard, not seen. Something that lived in the spaces between walls, in the air vents, in the silence. Eventually, I stopped checking the door. I avoided it. I even stopped knocking. The humming became a kind of background noise again, like the ticking of a clock you eventually stop noticing. But sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself humming along. Just one long, steady note. No rise, no fall. And sometimes, when I paused, I could swear I heard something on the other side of the wall pausing too. Listening. Just waiting. When we moved into the building, it was supposed to be temporary. Just a 1-year lease until we figured out if we wanted to stay in the city. The apartment was nothing special. Beige walls, creaky floors, a view of the opposite brick wall. But it had character. Felt lived in. And the neighbors seemed quiet, which was a blessing after our last place. No thudding music through the walls. No stomping kids upstairs. Just a peaceful, dimly lit hallway and 6 identical doors. The neighbor directly across from us was a tall man in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. Wiry, with grayish hair and the kind of posture that made him seem both frail and tense at once. We only saw him in passing, always at the same time, early mornings around 6:15, and again just before 9 p.m. He never spoke more than a nod. Just that slight acknowledgement, as if to say, I see you, and that's enough. We called him the Walker, because that's what he did. Every night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., he walked the hallway. We didn't notice it at first. But one night, I got up for water and heard the soft shuffle of footsteps outside. I glanced at the clock, 3:33, glowing faintly red on the bedside table. I crept to the door, pressed my eye to the peephole, and there he was, the Walker, dressed in his pale bathrobe, barefoot, slowly pacing the hallway with his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't knock on any doors, didn't look around, just walked in a perfect line from one end of the hallway to the other, turned slowly, and walked back. His expression was blank. Eyes open, not blinking. I watched him until he passed out of view. Then I stood in the darkness of our apartment, glass of water in hand, feeling oddly cold. When I told my partner the next morning, they laughed. Said he was probably just an insomniac. But I kept waking up. Same time, same soft shuffle of bare feet. Every night without fail. 3:33. Like clockwork. Always the same rhythm, same posture, same silence. After a week, we started keeping track. My partner set up a small motion camera near the bottom of our door. Nothing too obvious, just something to see if he really did it every night. The first night we got footage, we sat on the couch in the morning and watched together. The timestamp hit 3:32, and the screen stayed still for a moment. Then movement. Pale blur passing by, slow and smooth. He never looked at the camera, just kept walking. But what caught my attention wasn't him, it was the hallway itself. In the video, the overhead lights flickered the entire time he walked. Not before, not after, just during. Like his presence disturbed the electricity somehow. My partner rewound and played it back again. We both leaned in, silent. At one point, the lights dimmed enough that it looked like he disappeared for a second, just vanished into the shadow, then reappeared a few steps later. The camera didn't glitch. Everything else stayed sharp. Just him. I wanted to believe it was a trick of the light. But every morning, the same footage, the same flicker, the same fading in and out. Then we noticed the sound. It wasn't loud, not at first. Just a soft static beneath the camera audio. But it would spike the second he came into frame. Almost like interference. It made my skin crawl in a way I couldn't explain. My partner ran some audio filters over it and pulled out something strange. A faint clicking beneath the static. Regular like a metronome, but uneven. Biological, like teeth tapping together, or nails against glass. We started locking the bedroom door at night. Felt ridiculous, but we couldn't help it. I began to dread 3:30. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, heart racing as the clock crept forward. Then the steps would begin. Always soft, always slow. Once, I pressed my hand against the door just as he walked past. The air on the other side felt colder, thinner. One night, I couldn't help myself. I opened the door a crack just as the clock turned 3:32. The hallway was empty, dead silent. I waited. Nothing. Then, just as I began to shut the door, I saw movement in the far corner, near the stairwell. Not walking, standing, perfectly still. The lights above him flickered faintly, and though he didn't move, I had the unshakable feeling that he knew I was watching. I closed the door and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, we found something outside our apartment. A small scrap of yellow paper, folded twice. No name, no handwriting. Just a date, October 6th. Neither of us recognized it. It was weeks away. We left it on the counter and went about our day trying to act normal. But something shifted after that. The hallway felt wrong, like the angles weren't quite right anymore. I started bumping into walls, misjudging distances. My partner said they kept waking up thinking someone was standing at the foot of the bed. We started sleeping with the light on. The walker never missed a night. The cameras caught him every time. But slowly, something changed. He started stopping. Just once per walk, he'd pause directly in front of our door. Never touched it. Just stood there. For 11 seconds. We timed it. Always 11. Then he'd move on. One night, he pressed his face to the peephole. We only saw it on the playback. Just one frame. A pale, gray eye staring directly into the lens. I screamed when I saw it. We deleted the footage and unplugged the camera. The date on the paper, October 6th, was fast approaching. We didn't know what to do. Move out? Call the building manager? Tell the police we were scared of a man walking in the hallway? Felt stupid. But we knew something was coming. We could feel it in the way the lights dimmed earlier each night. The way our clocks started drifting out of sync. The way mirrors in the apartment reflected us with just a half-second delay. October 6th arrived, and we stayed up all night. Every light in the apartment on. Door locked, camera unplugged. At 3:33, the footsteps began. But they were louder, slower. He stopped outside our door and didn't move. We didn't check. We didn't breathe. For nearly 3 minutes, we heard nothing. Then came a knock. One knock. Not loud. Not soft. Just deliberate. We never answered. After a while, the footsteps moved on. That was the last time we heard him walk. The next morning, his door across the hall was wide open. The inside of his apartment was empty. No furniture. No signs of life. Just dust. Dust on everything. Even the floor, like it hadn't been stepped on in months. We never saw him again. We stayed another 2 months before moving out. The hallway still felt wrong. Still too quiet. Too warped. On our last night, we left a note inside the peephole, folded the same way he used to leave his. No name. No writing. Just the time. 3:33. Some things don't need to be explained. There's a drawer in my kitchen I don't open anymore. It used to be where I kept small things, rubber bands, old receipts, expired coupons, forgotten warranties. One afternoon last fall, I opened it looking for batteries and found a letter addressed to someone I didn't recognize. Not that unusual, our mailboxes get mixed up all the time, but this letter was old. The postmark said 2018. I live in a building with thin walls and a slower pace. The kind of place people stay in for years, or until they vanish in the middle of the night with the blinds left drawn. My apartment is on the 3rd floor, tucked between 2 others. I moved in late last year, after the last tenant broke her lease suddenly. I didn't think much of it. People move. People leave. The apartment next door has been vacant ever since I arrived. That's what the leasing office said. Anyway, no lights, no footsteps, no furniture being moved in or out. Just an empty unit with a scratched black door and a dusty peephole that faces mine exactly. I never asked about the previous tenant. I figured the place was being prepped for a remodel or something. But every so often, I'd hear soft knocks from behind the shared wall. Not like pipes, not like rats, just knocks. They always came late, between midnight and 2 a.m., and they were too slow to be accidental. 3 or 4 knocks evenly spaced. I'd hold my breath, waiting to hear footsteps, voices, music, but there was never anything else. I told myself it was the building settling. The first time I mentioned it to the landlord, he waved it off, said the unit was officially unoccupied, and that I might be hearing echoes from the floor above. So I let it go, for a while, until I started finding things that didn't belong to me. It started with the letter, then a silver bracelet under my radiator. I found a scarf I didn't recognize hanging in my coat closet, folded neatly on the highest shelf. I thought maybe the last tenant had left it behind, so I asked downstairs if anyone had a forwarding address. They looked at me strangely, then said, "Which apartment are you in again?" When I told them, their smiles dimmed. One of them muttered something about bad paperwork and excused herself into the back office. That night I heard the knock again, but this time it was faster, like someone was running their knuckles along the wall from one end to the other. The sound passed behind my bed, traced across the living room, and then stopped behind the drawer in the kitchen. The same drawer I'd found the letter in. I didn't sleep. I sat in the hallway until sunrise, eyes fixed on the seam between the 2 units. In the morning, I taped over the drawer. Just masking tape, but enough to make it harder to open without thinking. I kept telling myself it was silly. The human brain fills in gaps, wants to make patterns where none exist. But then came the whispering. It was subtle, not language exactly, more like breath shaped into rhythm. Sometimes it felt like it came from the vents, other times from beneath the floorboards, but always near that wall. I tried to record it once using my phone, but all the playback caught was static, followed by the soft sound of my own name. I never told anyone that. I didn't want to believe it myself. I started checking the door to the vacant unit every day. It was always locked. The same thin layer of dust remained undisturbed on the knob. But once, around 3 a.m., I thought I saw light flicker under the door, just a slit of it, pale and cold. I approached and pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing. I knocked, gently, and something knocked back. Only this time it was from behind me. I turned, heart racing. My own door was ajar. I had locked it. I always lock it. I stepped inside and slammed it shut, bolting the top and bottom latches. My hallway was empty, but the light in the bathroom was on. I never leave it on. The scarf I'd found in the closet was draped over the mirror. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't touch it. I just left the light burning and shut the door. In the following days, my apartment changed. It wasn't just the creaks or knocks or lost items. It was the feeling of being observed, like someone standing behind you, just beyond your shoulder, leaning close enough to fog the glass. The air felt heavy. The rooms felt off balance, as if they leaned toward that shared wall. I started sleeping on the couch, facing the door. One night, I finally asked the leasing office again. This time, I pressed. I said I knew something was wrong. The woman at the desk hesitated, then admitted that yes, the unit next to mine had been empty for 5 years. The last tenant, a young woman, had died. No one found her for weeks. She'd been mailing letters to someone who never answered. Her body was discovered when the hallway began to smell. No one ever claimed her things. They thought they'd cleared it all out. They were wrong. She died alone, in the kitchen, right by the wall we share. I moved out a week later. I told myself it was because of work, or rent, or just needing a change of scenery. But the truth is, I couldn't breathe in that place anymore. Felt like she was still there, waiting, pressing up against the wall, knocking gently, leaving pieces of herself behind in the drawer, in the mirror, in the dark. Even now, months later, I'll open a box and find something I never owned. A hair tie, a note, a faint whisper in a voicemail with no caller ID. I don't answer the door at night anymore. I don't knock on walls. And I never open drawers I don't recognize. Some people leave. Some people linger. She never moved out.